And an enemy will gather forces against the Muslims, and the Muslims will gather forces against them. So 3 sons of a Khalifa will fight one another. And then the black flags. Right now, there's already massive wars going on. Right now, Muslims are dividing amongst themselves. This will be a battle the likes of which have never seen before. Towards the end of times, the Muslims and the Romans will form an alliance against a third party. Muslims and Romans will ally with one another. And then that alliance will be destroyed, only to get worse and worse until the Mahdi and Dajjal and Isa come. And Allah knows best. And during this time frame, people will convert from the Roman side to the Muslim side. Okay. So in Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ predicted, don't worry, we will conquer the Persian Empire, and that happened. And we will conquer the Byzantine Empire, and that happened. Jazakallah khair. And we will conquer Yemen, and all of that happened. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, you will become 3 armies. So he said, you will become. This is the Ummah. This is the civil war we talked about between the Muslims. You will become 3 armies. Jund bil-Sham, wa Jund bil-Iraq, wa Jund bil-Yemen. An army will be in Sham, an army will be in Iraq, and an army will be in Yemen. And wealth will be so much that a man will be given 100 dinars. Now 100 dinars, maybe if I were to say in our times, like $5,000. This is not a good amount. In other words, wealth will be so much that a good amount of wealth would be considered utterly trivial. Ibn Hawala said, Ya Rasulullah, when that happens, which of these 3 armies should I be with? Which of these 3 armies should I be with? The Prophet ﷺ said, I tell you to be in the army of Sham, of Syria, because it is the chosen of Allah's people, and it is where the Qiyamah will take place. Our Prophet ﷺ said, this is about the Mahdi. We jump to the Mahdi part. There was a phrase there I glossed over, and that is, there will be a treasure belonging to the Ummah, and 3 sons of a Khalifa, 3 princes. All of their fathers are royal family, all of their fathers are ruling. So 3 sons of a Khalifa will fight one another. So these are within the Ummah. This is the internal civil war that we talked about. And none of them will be victorious. They're all 3 going to fail. None of them will be victorious. And then the black flags will come from Khurasan, and then the Mahdi, and then the hadith goes on. So we jump to the Mahdi, but where does it begin? There will be an internal civil war. And what this hadith shows is that the Mahdi will come at a time when the Muslim Ummah itself is internally fighting. And the Mahdi will unify the Ummah from within. And frankly, when you look at what is happening now with the internal superpowers, and I don't like mentioning names, but you use your common sense and knowledge of politics. Right now, there's already massive wars going on. Right now, Muslims are dividing amongst themselves, each one of them doing its own, and Muslims are being harmed in the process. Allahul Musta'an. This is the issue of the internal war. Let us now move on to other wars that are predicted. One hadith mentions that one of the tabi'un was in Kufa, and Kufa was the land of Ibn Mas'ud. Ibn Mas'ud established his madrasa in Kufa. The greatest sahabi of Kufa was Ibn Mas'ud, and he died in Kufa as well. Ibn Mas'ud stood up. By the way, this hadith is in Sahih Muslim, I forgot to mention, and it's a long hadith. Ibn Mas'ud stood up and he said, the Qiyamah is not going to come until you see these signs. And these signs haven't come, so this cannot be the Qiyamah. Number 1, he said, people will not be able to divide their inheritance. This means massacres and death will be so profound that a person will have no family left. And people will not be happy over ghanima, war booty. Once again, means there's no family. And this is explicitly mentioned, we'll talk about it. Then he pointed towards Sham, Syria. He is in Iraq. He points towards the land that is known as Sham. And he said, and an enemy will gather forces against the Muslims, and the Muslims will gather forces against them. A man in the audience said, do you mean Ar-Rum, the Romans? He said, yes. So the term Roman, Rum, can de facto apply to the majority civilization, the superpowers of our times. So, And by the way, this is interesting because again, these are predictions that we are now seeing taking place. So Ibn Mas'ud said, yes, I mean the Romans. And at that time there will be a severe fighting, a fierce fighting. So for 3 days, Muslims are going in, and it is going to be massacre after massacre. Nobody will remain alive from the first batches that go. On the 4th day, Allah Azza wa Jal will grant victory to the Muslims, and the enemy will be defeated. So there will be 4 days of battle somewhere in Bilad al-Sham. Now this is the precursor. This is a massive war that will take place before the Armageddon. Now the hadith goes on, and this is from the statement. This will be a battle the likes of which have never seen before. That a bird that will fly over them will fall down dead. What will affect a bird in the heavens? Not swords. Get the point. Not swords. Something's going to happen that a bird in the heavens will be flying over. It will come down dead. And then the hadith goes on. Out of a family of 199 will perish and 1 will survive. The attrition rate in this war, 99%. Allahul Musta'an. What war in human history has had 99% death? While they are doing this, and they are finishing the battle, collecting the ghanima, recovering, they will hear there's a bigger calamity than this war. What could be a bigger calamity? Somebody will shout out, the Dajjal has come where your families have been left behind. So in that state, tired, bruised, bleeding, but their families are being attacked. Whoever is remaining in the land that they left behind, Bilad al-Sham, wherever there is, they will run, they will rush back to that land, and they will discover that it is a lie. It is not true. And in one hadith it is mentioned that they will send their 10 best horsemen to go verify that news. The 10 fastest horsemen. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, I know their names and the names of their forefathers and the colors of their horsemen, the colors of their horses, and they will be the best horsemen on the face of this earth. Now, does this mean we will go back to horses and swords? If there is that type of war, in all likelihood we will. If there is that type of war, when nuclear weapons and whatnot and every side and whatnot, then we will go back to those days when there was no electricity and whatnot. We're going to go back to this. Or is it possible that when the Prophet is saying horse, he means a vehicle? This is also possible. It's not too much of a stretch. That the Mahdi will be the one that will be there when the news comes that the Dajjal is around. So it appears that this big war that is being referenced is a war that the Mahdi will participate in, even though he's not mentioned in this one, right? So it is a war between Ar-Rum and between the Muslims. It is a massive war. Now, many have said this hadith is a reference to the Armageddon. And it could be true. Because here's the point. Is the Armageddon one battle or is it a series of battles? It goes back. If it's only one battle, then in all likelihood that will be Dajjal and Isa ibn Maryam. But if it is a series of major battles, then it makes sense that this hadith in fact is one of those big battles of the Armageddon. Allah knows best. The next hadith we'll mention, which is a very cryptic one, and it has been used by the terrorist group known as the Islamic State as their basis. We don't agree with this group, and I have very publicly criticized them. And all you need to do is look at how much damage they have done a lot of times. And by the way, I gave many lectures about this. Obviously, I'm new to the community still, but you will know, inshallah, when we go on. SubhanAllah, look at what the Prophet ﷺ said about the Kharijites, the Khawarij. He said, their speech is beautiful, but their actions are deadly. So this group known as the so-called Islamic State, which is now on its last legs and it will inshallah be completely eliminated. This group used the hadith I'm about to quote you as its basis, as one of its main bases. And it is authentic hadith, and it is the hadith in Sahih Muslim. Ar-Rum will come out to fight you at a place called A'maq or Dabiq. Now, Dabiq is, and A'maq is close to it, Dabiq is a city in Syria. And the best of the people of earth from the city of Medina will leave Medina and fight against them. When they are getting ready for war, lining up for war, listen to this, very cryptic. The Romans will say to the Muslims, leave us. with the group amongst you who have forsaken their religion. We want to fight them. I'll explain. The Muslims will say, La wallahi, we will never leave our brethren and will never abandon them to you. It's really profound, and inshallah it indicates that there will be massive conversion. So much so that the Bilad al-Rum remnants are angry that how come you have those people? So the battle will rage on. The battle will rage on. 1/3 of the Muslims will retreat out of cowardice, and Allah will never forgive them. 1/3 will be killed, and they will be the best of shuhada. And 1/3 will conquer. 1/3 will win. And they will not be tested. Maybe the test of the grave, maybe the test of the akhirah. They will not be tested. Allah will bless them and they will not be tested. And they, meaning that 1/3, will then conquer Constantinople. Again, we'll explain this in a while. It's a long hadith. When they will be dividing their ghanima, after they've hanged their swords on the trees to be oiled, then they will hear shaitan cry out that Dajjal has appeared amongst your children. Thinking it to be true, they will march to fight the Dajjal, but they will find it to be a lie, and they will reach Bilad al-Sham, Syria, and when they have lined up to pray Fajr, that is when Isa ibn Maryam will come down after the Dajjal has actually come, and he will then lead the Muslims in war and battle, and when Aduwallah, the Dajjal, sees Isa ibn Maryam, he will melt like salt is dissolved in water, and the Prophet ﷺ said, if he were to be left in that state, he would die. But Isa will kill him, and the people will see the blood of the blood of Dajjal on the weapon of Isa. End hadith. Now, again, this hadith is very, very cryptic. It mentions many things. First and foremost, it also reiterates the previous concept of a massive war between the Romans and the Muslims. Now, in this hadith, it mentions 1/3 only will die, whereas the previous hadith mentions 99% will die. As I said, it appears there will be multiple battles, not just one. And in some of them 99%, and in some of them 1/3. This hadith mentions that this army will conquer Constantinople, whereas the previous hadith does not mention that. So maybe there are multiple wars going on in the world, and the Dajjal's announcement will take place in all of them. Shaitan's going to frighten the Muslims. Dajjal is here. They're going to be expecting Dajjal because they're seeing the hadith take place. So Shaitan will use it as a tactic. So maybe multiple groups will run back to Bilad al-Sham, and there they will be with the Mahdi, and the Mahdi will then be leading them in Salah, and Dajjal will actually have come at that point in time, and then Isa will come down as we had mentioned. Another hadith that mentions all of these as well is that the Prophet ﷺ said, the fortress of Muslims on the day of the Malhama, this is where it is mentioned, the Armageddon, the Malhama, will be Ghuta, which is a city near Damashq, one of the best cities in Ash-Sham. The Prophet ﷺ said, hadith is in Mustadrak al-Hakim, is authentic, when the fitan occur, Iman will be in Bilad al-Sham. It shows that towards the very end of all of these trials, the Muslims will be united and they will be fighting outsiders. They will be fighting non-Muslims. And the people from other lands will come, like Medina. They will come because they know that they have to now fight on the side of the truth. So the fact that even from Medina, people are traveling all the way to be fighting, it shows that they recognize what is going place. It is also very clear that these wars are taking place with the Mahdi being alive. And when the Mahdi is alive, there is no civil war. How can you fight when the Mahdi is on one side, right? So this is a war between the Mahdi and the believers on one side and the unbelievers on the other side. This is a very clear issue. It also shows, as I said, that in all likelihood we're talking about multiple wars. Or maybe, Allah knows best, the Mahdi himself is going region to region. In one battle, 1/3 will die. In another battle, 99% will die. Allah knows best. Again, we don't know. We're just putting all of these together. And this also shows that these hadith are not anti-Semitic or anti-Western. No, it is good versus evil. And you will find people of all ethnicities on the side of good. And you will find people of all ethnicities on the side of evil as well. We talked about this last week. These hadith are not anti-Semitic. There will be righteous people who see the truth and they will be fighting on the side of truth. And that's why the other group will demand we want them back to us. There shall be a khilafah, but not based in Mecca or Medina, not based in Iraq like the Abbasids, not based in Damashq like the Umayyads, but rather based in al-Ard al-Muqaddas. إذا نزلت الخلافة بأرض المقدس. Now, in all likelihood, this is the Mahdi. Some have said maybe it's before the Mahdi. I am highly skeptical. There's too many ahadith that mention civil war and fighting and whatnot. And the ummah has never been united since the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu and Ali. Do you think it's going to get united again? But we strive for unity. But realistically, it's not going to happen until the Mahdi comes. So another issue that is explicitly mentioned is the conquest of Qistintiniya. Qistintiniya. Qistintiniya is, of course, Constantinople. This conquest will take place towards the end of times. That land will revert to being controlled by a group that is not sympathetic to Islam, maybe even if they call themselves Muslims. And there will be a reconquest of Istanbul, of Qistintiniya. Also, the ahadith mention that reconquest will take place miraculously, without any blood being shed. The people in that battle will come and find the walled gates, and they will realize they cannot fight the people of the city, but they will know this hadith. And the Prophet ﷺ is telling them, you're going to use this tactic of mine. He's telling them what to do. And they believe in the hadith, so they will use this tactic. So they will say, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, 4 times, all of them in unison. Their takbirat and their tahlilat, they are going to cause the walls to fall down, and they will conquer the city without any bloodshed. And then the news will come, Dajjal has come. So they will flee back to Bilad al-Sham. So to say Bani Ishaq is essentially a reference to the Romans. This is one interpretation. Another interpretation, it means the converts of the Yahud.